Mark Evans, CEO of the rapidly growing regional burger chain Burger Haven, sat in his sleek, modern office staring at a stack of customer complaints. The rising number of issues regarding employee behavior and service quality troubled him deeply. As the face of the company, Mark felt the weight of these complaints and knew he needed to understand the root cause of the problems. After much deliberation, he decided to go undercover. Disguised as a regular customer, he would visit multiple stores, immersing himself in the environment and witnessing firsthand the conditions his staff was working under. It wasn't a decision Mark took lightly. He had always prided himself on being a leader who led by example, but this was a step beyond. He was about to get a raw, unfiltered view of the inner workings of his business. Mark donned casual clothes, hoping to blend in with the customers, and mentally prepared for the challenge ahead. He knew the road wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to uncover the truth and restore Burger Haven's reputation. Mark's first stop was a bustling location in the heart of the city. He entered the restaurant and was immediately struck by the chaotic atmosphere. The restaurant was noisy and crowded, but it was more than just the bustle of customers, it was the disorganized flow of the staff. Employees were moving in every direction, seemingly without coordination. At the front counter, Heather, the cashier, was visibly disengaged. She barely greeted customers and seemed more interested in chatting with her coworkers than processing orders. When Mark reached the counter, Heather barely acknowledged him and made no attempt to engage with any warmth. Her tone was cold and uninviting. After receiving his order, Mark found a table and watched the scene unfold. He saw customers becoming frustrated, waiting longer than expected for their food, and many left dissatisfied. It was clear that something was terribly wrong here. Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility. This store was a direct reflection of his leadership, and what he saw was troubling. As Mark continued observing the store, he noticed Steve, the manager, was actively directing the staff but in a manner that seemed more confrontational than helpful. Steve barked orders at his team, moving from one station to another, but there was no sense of calm or teamwork. His tone was harsh, and he rarely acknowledged the employees' efforts or offered any support. Instead, he was quick to point out mistakes, making the environment tense and uncomfortable. Mark watched as Steve grew more frustrated with the team. At one point, he saw Steve reprimanding Heather loudly in front of customers, making the situation even more awkward. Mark could see how Steve's overbearing nature was creating an environment of fear rather than motivation. The employees appeared to be walking on eggshells, unsure of how to please their manager. Mark felt a wave of realization hit him. This toxic atmosphere was not only damaging employee morale but was also hurting customer satisfaction. Mark left the store feeling unsettled. What he had witnessed was more than just a few isolated incidents. It was a pattern that reflected a larger problem within the company. The issues with Heather's disengagement and Steve's micromanagement weren't just affecting the store's immediate performance. They were impacting the overall brand reputation of Burger Haven. Mark's initial excitement about the undercover mission was replaced by a deep sense of urgency. He needed to take immediate action, but he knew that fixing these issues would require more than just addressing individual employees. Mark recognized that the culture in these stores was broken, and it would take a systematic change to make it right. He was determined to make sure that every employee felt valued, supported, and motivated to perform their best. But before he could make any changes, he had to gather more information and assess the situation further. The next few visits would be crucial in uncovering the full extent of the problem. Mark's next undercover visit took him to a quieter location, where the atmosphere seemed less chaotic but still lacked the energy he wanted. He decided to observe not only the employees but also the customers, hoping to get a clearer picture of the problems. As he waited for his food, he overheard customers talking about their experiences. They mentioned long waits, cold food, and unhelpful staff. Mark's heart sank. It was clear that the issues were widespread. He realized that he needed to establish a better way to get feedback from both customers and employees without making anyone feel uncomfortable or threatened. The solution came to him as he watched customers casually mention their concerns. Mark decided that an anonymous feedback system would be the best approach. It would allow employees to voice their issues without fear of retribution, and customers would have a channel to share their thoughts about their experiences. On his third visit, Mark decided to take a different approach. He spent more time speaking with employees, observing their interactions when they didn't know he was watching. He could see the frustration in their eyes. Many of them were struggling to keep up with the demands of the job while also dealing with a lack of support from their managers. It wasn't just Heather and Steve. It seemed that the entire team was struggling to stay engaged. Mark realized that many employees were overwhelmed, working long shifts with little recognition. One of the employees, a young man named Chris, seemed particularly drained. When Mark casually asked him how things were going, Chris opened up. "It's tough," he said. "We're just constantly under pressure and there's no one to guide us. It's like we're always doing something wrong." Mark felt a pang of guilt. He knew that as the CEO he had the power to make changes, but he also realized that those changes had to come from within. He needed to empower his managers to lead effectively and give his employees the support they needed. Mark returned to the headquarters with a renewed sense of urgency. The issues he had witnessed in the stores were too widespread to ignore. The managers, especially Steve, needed to be trained on better leadership techniques. Mark had seen firsthand how poor management was contributing to the negative culture. He immediately called a meeting with his regional managers to discuss the changes that needed to be made. "One of the biggest issues we have is with leadership," Mark explained during the meeting. "We need to focus on developing stronger, more supportive managers. We can't allow employees to feel like they're constantly under pressure or that they have no one to turn to for help." He emphasized the need for empathy, active listening, and coaching in management. Mark believed that revising the manager training program would be a crucial first step in transforming the atmosphere at his stores. The next step in Mark's plan was the implementation of an anonymous feedback system. He wanted to ensure that all employees had a way to voice their concerns and suggestions without the fear of retaliation. The system would allow employees to submit feedback on their experiences, their managers, and the overall work environment. Mark also made sure that there would be a follow-up process to ensure that the feedback was taken seriously and acted upon. The rollout of the feedback system was met with mixed reactions. Some employees were skeptical, unsure if their voices would actually be heard. However, Mark remained committed to transparency and promised to personally review the feedback. He knew that building trust would take time, but the feedback system was a vital step toward creating an open dialogue between employees and management. As part of his initiative to improve employee morale, Mark introduced a new employee recognition program. The goal was to highlight those who went above and beyond in their roles, providing them with tangible rewards such as bonuses, gift cards, and extra time off. Mark wanted to ensure that employees felt appreciated and that their hard work didn't go unnoticed. Mark observed that when employees were recognized for their efforts, they took more pride in their work. The overall atmosphere in the stores began to shift. Employees started smiling more, interacting with customers in a friendlier manner, and showing more enthusiasm during their shifts. Mark could see the impact of recognition taking shape, and it fueled his resolve to continue making improvements. The change in morale was palpable, and he knew it was just the beginning. As the weeks passed, Mark continued to visit different stores, carefully tracking the changes. He saw a noticeable shift in the customer experience. The service was faster, friendlier, and more efficient. While there were still areas to improve, the stores were starting to look like the places Mark had envisioned when he first founded Burger Haven. Customers were commenting on the improved service, and many of them expressed their appreciation for the staff's friendliness. The anonymous feedback system had become an invaluable tool for identifying both strengths and areas of improvement. Mark could see the results of the changes he had implemented. Employees were more engaged and customers were more satisfied. It was a win-win situation, and Mark knew that he had to continue fostering this environment of positivity and growth. A few months after implementing the changes, Mark returned to the same store where he had first witnessed Heather's disengagement and Steve's overbearing management style. This time the atmosphere was noticeably different. Heather greeted customers with a smile and seemed more engaged in her work. Steve was still directing his team, but his approach was more supportive and collaborative. Mark approached Heather and complimented her on her improved attitude. She seemed surprised at first but smiled genuinely. "Thank you," she said. "I feel like I'm actually being heard now." Mark then spoke with Steve, who admitted that the new manager training had made a big difference in his approach to leadership. "I've learned a lot about how to support my team," Steve said, "and it's made all the difference." Mark felt a sense of relief. The culture was changing, but it wasn't a quick fix. It was the result of ongoing effort and commitment. Mark understood that maintaining a positive work culture required constant attention. While he was pleased with the progress, he knew there was always room for improvement. He began introducing more team-building activities and opportunities for employees to bond outside of work. Whether it was a team lunch, a volunteer day, or a friendly competition, these events helped foster camaraderie and a sense of belonging among the staff. Employees started to open up about their experiences more, and the feedback Mark received reflected a deeper sense of connection within the teams. Workers felt more valued, and their increased engagement translated into better service for customers. Mark was excited to see the positive impact of these initiatives and remained committed to fostering an environment where employees felt supported and motivated. Mark's changes were beginning to take hold, not just in one store but across the entire region. The feedback system had been rolled out to all locations, and employee recognition programs were now a regular part of the company culture. Mark began to receive positive reports from his regional managers, who noted a marked improvement in morale and service. Recognizing the momentum, Mark began planning for a larger-scale initiative to bring these changes to all of the chain's locations. He knew that in order for Burger Haven to continue growing and thriving, it would need to prioritize employee well-being just as much as customer satisfaction. This shift in focus would be a game-changer for the company's future. As the changes continued, Mark began to see how much of a difference effective leadership could make. He had learned firsthand how negative management could poison the work environment, but he also saw how positive leadership could turn things around. Managers who embraced the new training and took an active role in supporting their teams were seeing better results, both in terms of employee performance and customer satisfaction. Mark realized that he could no longer be a distant CEO. To continue improving, he needed to lead by example, setting the tone for the entire company. He made it a point to visit stores regularly, offering support and encouragement to managers and employees. Mark knew that his commitment to being an active, engaged leader would help sustain the changes he had put in motion. As the months went by, Mark saw an increase in customer loyalty. More people were returning to Burger Haven, drawn not only by the quality of the food but also by the improved service. Mark began to receive feedback from loyal customers who appreciated the friendliness and attentiveness of the staff. The company's reputation was improving, and customer satisfaction was at an all-time high. Mark knew that this shift in customer perception was a direct result of the changes he had made to improve employee morale and leadership practices. Customers could sense the difference, and it had a lasting impact. The stronger relationship between employees and customers was helping Burger Haven build a loyal customer base that would support the company as it continued to expand. With the positive changes Mark had introduced, employee retention started to improve as well. Turnover rates, which had been high due to poor management and low morale, began to drop. Employees felt more secure in their jobs and were motivated to stay with the company. Mark recognized that retaining good employees was just as important as attracting new ones. The stability within the workforce allowed the company to build stronger, more cohesive teams that worked well together. As the company continued to grow, Mark made it a priority to invest in his employees, knowing that they were the driving force behind the company's success. The revised manager training program was proving to be one of the most successful initiatives Mark had implemented. Managers who had undergone the new training were leading with empathy and effectiveness. They were able to connect with their teams on a deeper level, offering support and guidance rather than simply issuing commands. Mark saw the impact of this firsthand as he visited stores where the managers had embraced the new approach. Employees were thriving under the guidance of supportive leaders, and the stores were running smoothly. The culture of respect and collaboration had taken root, and it was making a significant difference in the overall success of the company. Mark's employee recognition program continued to gain traction. As employees received recognition for their hard work, they became more invested in their jobs and more motivated to perform at their best. The recognition program helped reinforce the company's values, highlighting the importance of teamwork, customer service, and dedication. Mark continued to emphasize the importance of acknowledging employees' contributions. He knew that small gestures of recognition could go a long way in fostering loyalty and creating a positive work environment. As employees felt more appreciated, they were more likely to stay with the company and contribute to its continued success. Buoyed by the success of his initiatives in the regional stores, Mark decided to roll out the changes on a national level. He knew that the improvements in employee morale, customer satisfaction, and overall culture needed to be standardized across all Burger Haven locations. This would be the next step in building a company that not only served great food but also provided an exceptional experience for both customers and employees. Mark began working with his team to create a comprehensive plan for national expansion. He was confident that the changes would set Burger Haven apart from other burger chains, making it a leader in both quality and employee satisfaction. A year after Mark's undercover mission, Burger Haven had transformed into a company known not only for its delicious burgers but also for its strong company culture and employee satisfaction. The changes Mark had implemented had revitalized the brand, and the company was now on a path to national success. Mark's commitment to his employees and his willingness to make difficult decisions had paid off. He had learned the value of listening to his team, leading with empathy, and fostering a positive work environment. As the company continued to grow, Mark knew that the well-being of his employees would always remain his top priority. The future of Burger Haven had never looked brighter.